That sound is a 1965 Lawnmower D400, starting on the first pull, 60 years after it rolled off the Galesburg, Illinois assembly line. For 4 decades, the lime green deck was the default mower of the American suburb, built so tough that owners willed them to their sons. Today, you can buy a Lawn Boy at any big box store, but it shares almost nothing with the iron-lunged machine that built the brand. However, this company was not killed by Honda, by the EPA, or by changing tastes. It was killed by the people who owned it. The year is 1934. America is 5 years into the Great Depression. Lawnmowers for most homeowners are still hand-pushed reel mowers, the same design Edwin Budding patented in England in 1830. A powered mower is a luxury item, and luxury items are not selling. In Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the Evinrude Manufacturing Company has a problem. Its business is small 2-stroke engines for outboard boat motors, and during the Depression, almost nobody is buying a new boat. The factory has workers, the warehouse has parts, but the order book is empty. Therefore, the company does what desperate manufacturers have always done. It looks at its inventory and asks what else those engines could push. The answer is a steel deck, 4 small wheels, and a vertical shaft adaptation of an outboard powerhead. The engine, designed to push a fishing skiff across a Wisconsin lake, is rebuilt to spin a horizontal blade across a suburban yard. In a literal sense, the first Lawn Boy is a boat motor that learned to walk. But the real innovation is not the engineering, it is the name. In 1934, Evinrude trademarks Lawn Boy. Not a brand of mower, a brand of helper. The marketing positions the machine as the family's mechanical son, the one who never complains about Saturday chores. The lime green paint, the cult following, the 30-year reign over the American suburb are all still decades away. What matters in 1934 is that the engine starts on the first pull and runs on a fuel mix any homeowner can measure with a soup can. The 2-stroke rasp that would define 40 years of American summers cuts through the air for the first time, and nobody who hears it forgets it. However, before Lawn Boy can become an empire, it has to survive a war. By 1952, the suburb the engine was waiting for finally exists. The GI Bill, 3-bedroom ranch houses, and roughly 13 million new homes built between 1946 and 1958 have created something America has never had before: a continent of lawns that nobody wants to cut by hand. Evinrude, now operating its mower division out of Galesburg, Illinois, is ready. That year, Lawn Boy releases the D-Series engine, and the design choices made in that small Illinois plant set the standard for the next 30 years. The cylinder is aluminum with a cast iron sleeve pressed inside, a configuration borrowed from aviation engines. It is the kind of engineering a wartime piston engine machinist would recognize on sight, and in 1952, a lot of the men working the Galesburg line are exactly that. The deck is magnesium, less than a quarter the weight of steel and immune to rust, a metal almost no other mower manufacturer is willing to pay for. The whole machine weighs around 46 pounds. A 9-year-old can push it. A grandfather can lift it into the back of a station wagon without help. Therefore, when the lime green paint goes on the deck in 1954, the brand has its silhouette. From 2 houses away, on any block in Cleveland, or Phoenix, or Levittown, you know what is cutting that grass before you see the operator. But the engineering choice that mattered most was the one Lawn Boy made about combustion. A 2-stroke engine fires on every revolution instead of every other revolution, which means more power per pound, fewer moving parts, no valves, and no oil sump to leak. It can be tipped on its side to clean the deck. It can be stored upside down in a basement rafter. It runs on a fuel mix any homeowner can measure with a soup can, 16 parts gasoline to 1 part oil. When a 4-stroke Briggs & Stratton needs a tune-up, a Lawn Boy D400 just needs more gas. There is a price for all of that simplicity, however, and the price is a thin blue ribbon of smoke trailing behind every machine. The smoke is unburned oil, a normal byproduct of 2-stroke combustion, and in 1952, it is the smell of a Saturday morning. For now, the engine is unkillable. Lawn Boy mowers come back to dealerships not because they broke, but because their owners died and the family wanted them serviced. The D engine sits stubborn under 1,000 garage benches, waiting through every Wisconsin winter for somebody to wrap a rope around its flywheel and ask it to work again. By 1959, Lawn Boy controls roughly a quarter of the American residential mower market. the Galesburg plant runs 3 shifts. The independent dealer network grows past 2,000 shops, and the lime green deck, the blue smoke, and the 2-stroke rasp become, for an entire generation, the literal sound of an American summer. However, the company that built that empire is about to make a decision in a Milwaukee boardroom, and the decision will have nothing to do with mowers. The decision in the Milwaukee boardroom comes in 1956. That year, Evinrude formally merges with Johnson Motors and a handful of smaller marine engine companies to create the Outboard Marine Corporation, OMC. On paper, it is a sensible consolidation. In reality, it is the moment Lawn Boy stops being a company and becomes a line item. Until 1956, the mower division had been Evinrude's clever pivot, the project that kept the lights on during the Depression. After 1956, it is one of 7 business units inside a publicly traded conglomerate that answers to shareholders in Manhattan, not to mower buyers in Indiana. The accountants in Milwaukee can now look at Lawn Boy and ask a question that nobody at Evinrude ever asked. How much cash does this division throw off, compared to the other 6? For the first 10 years, the answer is enough cash to leave the division alone. And what Lawn Boy does, when it is left alone, is conquer the country. In 1965, the Galesburg engineers released the F-Series engine, an evolution of the D that adds a self-propelled drive system powered by a belt-driven gearbox under the deck. A homeowner can now walk behind the mower instead of pushing it, and the mower will pull itself across a half-acre lot without complaint. The deck stays magnesium. The cylinder stays iron-sleeved aluminum. The paint stays the same, impossible to mistake green. In Milwaukee, the F-Series launch is approved by men who have never used the product. By 1968, the independent dealer network has grown past 6,000 shops. There is a Lawn Boy dealer in every county seat in the Midwest, every hardware store on every small-town main street from Pennsylvania to Oregon. The dealers do warranty work, sell parts at cost, and stand behind every machine they sell. Customers buy mowers from the same dealer their father bought from. Some buy them from the same man. Therefore, for roughly 15 years, the morning chorus that rises across American subdivisions every Saturday between April and October is almost monotonously the same instrument. A 2-stroke rasp in Levittown, a 2-stroke rasp in Anaheim, a 2-stroke rasp in every cul-de-sac the GI Bill ever paid for. A foreign visitor walking through an American suburb in 1968 would have heard one engine note before he heard any other. But while the Galesburg plant ships its millionth unit, the corporate parent in Milwaukee is doing something that will eventually starve it. OMC begins to diversify. In 1971, the company buys Pioneer Saws, a Canadian chainsaw manufacturer. It launches the Johnson Ski Horse and Evinrude snowmobile lines. It expands its Cushman utility vehicle division. The marine engines remain the crown jewel. The lawnmower division remains the steady earner. And the new acquisitions remain expensive bets that need feeding. Lawn Boy, once the favored child that saved the company from the Depression, slowly becomes the forgotten sibling. The capital expenditure for the next generation of mower engines gets deferred. The marketing budget gets cut. The Galesburg plant gets asked to do more with less, year after year, while OMC pours money into snowmobile development and outboard horsepower wars. For most of the 1970s, the brand coasts on the engineering decisions made 20 years earlier. The D and F engines are so durable that even a neglected Lawn Boy keeps selling itself, year after year, through word of mouth and a dealer network that still believes in the green deck. However, durability does not last forever, and neither does the patience of a boardroom that has stopped counting customers and started counting quarters. By the late 1970s, OMC is sitting on roughly $750 million in debt. The snowmobile bets have gone cold, the chainsaw division is losing money, and the marine engine business is fighting a horsepower war with Mercury that nobody is winning. The board needs cash, and Lawn Boy is the division that has been generating it for 2 decades without complaint. Therefore, the squeeze begins in Galesburg. The first thing to go is the magnesium deck. Starting in 1981, Lawn Boy mowers ship with a stamped aluminum housing that costs a fraction of what the magnesium deck did to produce. The new deck is still light enough to handle, but it rusts at the bolt holes, dents on contact with curbs, and warps after enough sun exposure. Engineers at Galesburg flag the change as a step backward. The accountants in Milwaukee approve it anyway. The belt-driven gearbox under the self-propelled models is the next casualty. Cheaper bearings, thinner belts, lower tolerances. By 1985, a 5-year-old lawn boy with a self-propelled drive starts slipping under load, something a 1965 F-Series engine never did. Dealers begin getting warranty returns on machines that were never supposed to come back, but the deepest wound is invisible. OMC stops investing in two-stroke research entirely. The Galesburg engineering team, the men who designed the iron-sleeved cylinder back in 1952, are told to maintain the existing product line and propose no new engine families. The brand that built itself on engineering pedigree is being asked to coast. In 1989, OMC sells the Lawn Boy name to the Toro Company of Bloomington, Minnesota, for around $44 million. It is the last major divestiture OMC will ever execute from a position of strength. Within 11 years, the parent company itself files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, sells off its marine divisions, and dissolves. The conglomerate that absorbed Lawn Boy in 1956 to milk its steady earnings is, by December 2000, gone. The brand it strip-mined for 33 years is now somebody else's problem. For a few years, Toro keeps the Lawn Boy lineup roughly intact. The lime green stays. The two-stroke engines keep shipping. The dealer network, now serving two brands under one roof, holds together. However, in 1995, the United States Environmental Protection Agency finalizes Phase 1 of its small engine emission standards. The unburned oil that drifted out of every Lawn Boy exhaust for 40 years is now classified as a regulated pollutant. The two-stroke, the engineering choice that made the brand light, simple, and durable, has become the engineering choice that makes the brand illegal. Toro phases out two-stroke development immediately. By the time EPA Phase 2 lands in 2005, with even tighter hydrocarbon limits, a residential two-stroke walk-behind mower is functionally extinct in the American market. Honda, Briggs, and Stratton, and Toro's own engine division have spent 15 years preparing for this moment. Lawn Boy has not, because OMC spent 15 years refusing to fund the research that might have prepared it. Therefore, by 2007, the Galesburg plant closes. Production of Lawn Boy branded mowers moves to a Toro facility in Mexico, where the machines are now assembled around Toro's 4-stroke OHV engine, a 4-stroke gearbox, and a steel deck. The lime green paint stays. Everything underneath it is somebody else's mower. The men who designed the D and F engines, the dealers who built the network, and the homeowners who willed their machines to their sons are not consulted. The brand has stopped being a product. It is a sticker on a deck that somebody else builds. Walk into any Home Depot in 2026, and you will find Lawn Boy mowers on the floor next to the Toro mowers, the Honda mowers, and a half-dozen private label brands. The Lawn Boy machine looks fine. It runs fine. It cuts grass at the same rate, mulches the clippings the same way, and starts on the first pull, just like the original D400 did. But it shares no parts with the original. The engine is Toro's Briggs-derived 4-stroke, the deck is steel, and the drive system is Toro's own. Even the lime green has been color-corrected to match modern paint specifications. The brand on the side is the only continuous thread. However, the engines OMC and Toro stopped building have entered a second life. A running 1968 D400 in original lime green now sells on eBay for somewhere between $300 and $600, depending on condition. That same machine retailed for around $90 when it left Galesburg. The F-Series engines, especially the post-1976 dual-port variant, are restored by hobbyists who buy parts from old stock dealers and machine shops that still know how to lap a two-stroke cylinder. Why are the old ones worth 6 times the price of a new one? Because they don't make them like that anymore. It is, in this case, not nostalgia. It is a literal description of a manufacturing capability that no longer exists in the United States, in any factory, under any brand. Lawn Boy was not killed by Honda. Honda built a better 4-stroke and took its market share fairly. Lawn Boy was not killed by the EPA. The EPA wrote rules every American manufacturer had to follow. Lawn Boy was killed by a holding company that decided a steady earner was worth less than a snowmobile gamble, and by a buyer that wanted the name on a shelf more than the engineering inside the engine. The Lawn Boy brand that exists today is a corporate inheritance. The Lawn Boy machine that defined 40 years of American summers exists somewhere else. Today, the real Lawn Boy lives in Facebook groups dedicated to vintage machines, where thousands of members trade parts, post compression numbers, and photograph factory original lime green decks. It shows up at antique engine shows in Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, where retired engineers haul tarp-covered D4 hundreds out of pickup beds and quote two-stroke oil ratios from memory. And it survives in basement workshops where a 60-year-old machinist will spend a weekend lapping a cylinder by hand because the part that needs replacing has not been manufactured since 1989. The going rate for a running 1968 D400 has climbed to between $300 and $600. That is not a market for nostalgia. That is a market for the last working examples of a manufacturing standard that the United States stopped meeting. What gets called progress and what gets called obsolescence is rarely an engineering question. The two-stroke lawn boy did not stop working in 1995. The rules around it changed, the corporate budget around it dried up, and the men who knew how to build it aged out. The machine itself, the actual physical machine, kept doing exactly what it was designed to do. A green deck under a tarp in a suburban garage in Galesburg, dust on the pull cord, gasoline drained for the winter. 60 years on, and that engine will still start on the next pull. The brand is somebody else's. The machine is still ours.